This is 91.3 FM, WCW in Worcester, Massachusetts, the Dr. Chris Radio Horror Program. Tonight on Radio Horror, we have Jeanette from HorrorMade.com, a blog that I ran into at Rock and Shock, and she's on the show with us now to talk a little bit about her blog here in the New England area. Thank you for coming on the show with us, Jeanette.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited.
For the audience not familiar with your site, tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the best way to describe my blog is as kind of a multimedia horror experience. I am a horror maker, hence why I call it Horror Made. I explore like my own writing in horror and share other people's short stories and my own artwork and horror poems and things like that. So it's kind of just a place to be horrific, but in a fun way. So I do I do lots of things actually. So I have a YouTube channel that connects with my horror made blog, and that one's like speed paintings and songs and tour videos of random creepy places around the world. And well, I can say it's the world now because we have one from Florence now. Otherwise, it's all from New England because that's where I'm from. And yeah, right now I'm sharing some of my NaNoWriMo attempts. I've never properly sat down to finish writing a novel before, but I decided this year I need to get that off of my to-do list. So I'm, as of Monday, sharing some excerpts from the project I've been working on. Because when I first started working on horror, it was all in film. So I come to horror as a production designer, actually. I've made some delightfully cheesy sci-fi horror movies in the past. Now I'm kind of focusing on my own stuff rather than just working on like bigger production things.
What are some of the productions that you've worked on?
So I've worked on sci-fi specifically was this movie called Dark Hall, and that one's about the Jersey Devil. I am proud of the breakaway walls I made. Otherwise it's not a great movie, but it is fun to make fun of. I think eventually I need to post the actual drinking game that goes with it because it's pretty funny. Not what I would call top-notch horror, but it was fun to make. I also worked with this company called Synthetic Cinema, who's out of Connecticut, and they're amazing. They've made some amazing things. My favorite thing that I've worked on with them was Dead Souls, and that one was based on a book for Michael Lamo. But Dead Souls was a lot of fun to work on. That one was like a ghost story. Kid out in the woods discovers he has a little bit more to his history than he once thought.
Now, a lot of your posts on your blog don't cover just like mainstream horror stuff. What are you trying to show with your blog?
I'm really interested in what indie horror has to offer, whether it's self-published books or if it's, you know, movies made on someone's iPhone or something. Like I love to see what people can come up with without a proper budget. So when people, you know, put their time and energy into something they're really passionate about, that's what I think is more exciting than mainstream horror.
What are some examples that you can give us about like some of the stuff that you've really seen that you're really interested in?
Oh, I think the first book that pops into my head is Brain Eater Jones by Stephen Kerber. I should know his last name by now. Hang on, let me look that up. Kawazowski? I'm making up his last name now. Blip, blip. While I look that up. Stephen Kaczynski. I'll text it to you later. Kaczynski, I can't pronounce his last name, but I love his writing because he takes such a fresh look at horror, and specifically zombies. I feel like zombies in horror is just, it's so oversaturated with these cannibalistic undead right now. You know, with The Walking Dead being as popular as it is, lots and lots of people are writing about zombies. But Stephen's work, Brain Eater Jones, takes zombies, sets it in Prohibition-era Chicago, and then has it play out like a noir detective novel. And it's just so refreshing because the characters are like really gritty, awesome noir characters living in this world where, you know, the zombie virus is a real thing and people are just kind of turning on each other and eating each other, and yet still living side by side as this like weird subspecies. So it just like captured me. I'm just like, oh, I need to see what else people are making, because every time I find these new stories, I'm just like, there is hope for the horror genre. It's not all the same story all the time. There's new stories to be told, and I like finding those.
There's a lot of artwork on your blog as well. Where's a lot of that coming from?
A lot of the artwork comes from me. Most of the artwork on my blog right now comes from me, because I feel like I'm an artist first and a writer second. Although blogging has kind of like has been my way of like finding a way to really talk about art and talking about other people and collaborating with other people. So one of the main things I like to do on my blog is like collaborate with authors. So then on Tuesdays we have Horror Haikus Days. So I have one of my friends, Patrick Rahal, he writes a horror haiku, and then I do artwork that goes with it. And then some of my readers send in horror haikus and like 2-sentence horror stories, and then I'll illustrate things to go with them, and then it kind of pairs up, and it's fun to like see how we can create together. So I've been enjoying doing that a lot, and definitely exploring more of my skills as just a visual artist.
There's one in particular, I don't know what it is. It's some type of like sharp-toothed mouth bat demon woman of some kind.
Yeah. That one was for this past week. One of my author friends, her name's Pancake Bunnykins, and her website is a twisted, messy, beautiful sunshine.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay. Do you have any great recommendations for people of maybe some books and movies that you've seen in the horror genre? Is there any great horror books and movies that you could recommend that aren't of the norm, that aren't like Crimson Peak? Even though I saw you did a great review of Crimson Peak,
yeah.
What are some other things? Like, I recommend Maggie to people, even though it's really slow-paced, I still enjoyed it. Or Bloodsucking Bastards, I thought was like one of the best comedies to come out this year, and involves vampires and offices.
I haven't watched that one yet, but I have heard of it, and now I need to go watch that. Horror movies, I'm still getting like deeper into things that I find are more like off the beaten path. One that I watched recently that at first, like, have you ever watched movies where the first time you watch it through and you're kind of like, I don't know if I like this, and then you decide you want to watch it a second time through, and then you're like, no, actually I like this, and then you watch it again, you're just like making fun of it and enjoying the heck out of it. One of those movies was Angelic Wolves, and that was one that I recently reviewed. It was one of those movies that I just wasn't quite sure how to deal with it, because it was so cheesy, and yet really enjoyable, because it was just so incredibly goofy. It was a spoof on Twilight, but with werewolves, and how like werewolves are guardian angels of the forest, and it just got like super melodramatic at other moments, and sometimes my favorite part was this part where this masked villain, classic old school horror movie style, shows up and just is like, I'm gonna burn down the forest, like this crazy cartoon character.
Very snively Whiplash, just twirling the mustache.
Exactly. He's like, I'm gonna burn down the forest. This is my nefarious deed. And then, of course, the angelic wolf shows up and helps deal with that situation. But it was just like, I was so surprised by it, because it wasn't what I was expecting at all. So that one definitely is sticking out in my mind at the moment. Books, however, I spend a lot more time in, believe it or not. I read almost constantly.
Are you a big comic reader?
One that I read that's stuck with me, it's been almost a year since I read it, I think, but it still sticks with me, as it's an anthology novel of horror, short horror stories, and it's called A Penny Down the Well. And it's by J.A. Crook. It's by J.A. Crook, and this one is just like, every single story in this book feels like a full, like you went on a journey that's almost like a full novel, yet it's only a couple pages long. And I've seen other authors sort of get to that point of where they just are able to tell such a full, like, chilling, interesting story story without going to an actual like 50,000 word count, which is incredible to me. So that one, not many people have probably heard of A Penny Down the Well, but if you like horror, especially like, I want to say Stephen King, but that's not quite right. It's like if Neil Gaiman were to write a short story collection of horror, that kind of is more what it feels like, because it has reality mixed with this fantasy horror thing going on. It was really enjoyable.
Do you read a lot of graphic novels or comics? I'm a big comic book reader, and of course, as you know, I think I've told you I'm working on my own gender swap Dracula comic book.
Yeah, which is awesome. When you do write that, I'd love to read it.
Well, we have the first 5 pages in development right now with the artist. The artist told me that the 52-page comic book will take a year to do. So we're also kind of talking about, well, what if we put this out like by issue instead of trying to do one giant graphic novel? But you know, it's a work in progress, and there's a couple other horror comics that I'm in development for. But I'll have a 5-page mini comic out very soon, possibly a 10-page mini comic to give people something to state their taste with before we get the actual comic book out. And it's, again, completely like the story you know about Dracula, modernized a little bit, but gender swapped the entire cast, not just Dracula.
That's fantastic. I definitely let me know when you have that come out, because comics to me, there's something that I just recently got into, like within the last couple of years, which is absurd to me, because now that I'm reading them, I'm like, what have I been missing out on? I love illustration and story and reading, and all of this is mixed into one medium. What's wrong with me? So now I feel like I'm just like gobbling them up as fast as I can, trying to catch up on all of the horror stories out there. Like, for example, I was like, oh, let me read, American Vampire. This is cool. Oh my gosh, Scott Snyder is amazing. Also, let me read Severed. Who's the author? It's also Scott Snyder. Whoa! And my mind was just blown because I loved the stories so much. But it was Sandman that got me into reading comics and graphic novels originally. And it's kind of like just spread out from there. So I definitely search more for... I really like to see a really strong story with deep characters in my graphic novels. I also really like to see a lot of detail in the artwork. So I find some that are like, okay, and the ones that I just like geek out over are things like Pretty Deadly, because I'm just like, it's so cool, and all of this artwork, and so many plot twists.
And of course, you know, Preacher has been made into a TV series.
Yeah, Preacher. I have yet to read that one. I have like both of them sitting quite literally on my headboard. I'm like waiting for me to read them. That one, just like, I started reading volume 1 rather. I'm just like, whoa, it's so brutal.
It's
so incredibly brutal.
It is, and that guy actually worked on The Punisher right afterwards, Steve Dillon, and the writer as well. They went to do The Punisher, Welcome Back Frank, which brought Frank Castle back into the mainstream Marvel universe after being a bunch of stupid plot lines for quite some time. And fans really gravitated to it because they jumped from DC Comics to Marvel Comics.
Mm-hmm. And there's a good reason for it, because it suddenly is like, it's a very adult storyline where you just like, you're excited to see where it's going. I mean, I'm excited to see where it's going.
Does your website cover a lot of horror video games as well?
On Haunting TV, which I have created with my husband Alexander, that one we spend a lot of time on video games. Right now we have our first Let's Play, which is for The Evil Within. We've been slowly working our way through. We do like a chunk every week. And it's been a lot of fun. Like, gaming, again, is something that I'm newer to, but Alexander's been a gamer for a very long time. He just like marathoned through Batman, the newer one, and The Last of Us, the remastered version, and now we're what's the next one? Oh, Alien Isolation he barreled through. So we're like kind of getting deeper and deeper into the gaming stuff, which is really enjoyable. But there's just so much out there. Like it's like, as a new gamer, I'm just like, where do I start?
Until Dawn is really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't played that one yet.
Great story arc. Very tropey horror characters, but that's what it's meant to be.
Nice.
And of course, my show doesn't always cover horror. When horror is kind of in the boring zone right now, or it's just like, what am I going to talk about? What's happening on The Walking Dead? Everyone's talking about that. What am I going to talk about? Supernatural? Well, that's cool because Supernatural doesn't get a lot of coverage. But sometimes I get into like the darkness of other aspects of superheroes and sci-fi and fantasy. Like we'll be talking about the upcoming Netflix series Jessica Jones, which of course you're invited to, and I hope you and your husband can attend.
I hope so. That would be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that one. Like even the darker side of superhero stuff is just really getting me excited. Like Arrow, I'm really enjoying, and the Flash I am currently marathoning through, and Daredevil. I was just like, oh, characters with meat that I can care about. This is great.
Well, why don't you give out your website again? If you're on any social media, plug that as well.
Okay. So you can find me on horrormade.com, like making horror. And on Twitter, I'm horror_made. And on Facebook, it's facebook.com/horrormade. I'm all those places. And some more, but those are the main ones I frequent.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you, Jeanette, for coming on the show. Again, it was a pleasure running into a Rock and Shock and getting to know you over Facebook. Everyone definitely check out her website, horrormade.com. I myself sometimes dip way too much into normal mainstream horror, and I try to cover a lot of the independent stuff, but Jeanette does a really good job with it, with her website and her partner as well. Your partner's name escapes me just because she's not on the interview with us.
That's okay. Christina. Yeah, we do book reviews and stuff in our video format. She's more my YouTuber buddy.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show with us again, Jeanette.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me here.